All right, so this is Clubhouse Foam Chat, episode 2, or Foam Talk. Which is it? I forget.
Foam Talk.
Foam Talk.
No, wait, you're right. CFC. We're going CFC.
CFC.
Yeah.
Today's episode, we want to focus on stage flywheelers. Mr. Rad has designed one, and we have built them, and we can get velocities upside of 250 FPS. And coming from a half dart dual stage flywheeler, that is something that people like to see. So we want to do a video and see if we can show that to you. So for this portion, the Rad Blaster's Pretty Fly dual stage that has the current, I call it the record because I haven't seen higher, with a half dart of 258 FPS, is a blaster I built for my close friend, Christian. And he came here today, took the drive up, and we are going to try to do some live testing with the owner. So he's here today.
Hello.
Hello. And we've got my crony here today and the dog. So let me switch it so where you can see just the crony. Okay. So this, we have not shot this through the crony since I built it. So I have not taken a reading since it got 258. So this is a surprise for everyone here as well. So the noise is about to go real high. So if you're listening, you might want to either go on mute or be ready for that. All right, here we go. All right, that's good. So we didn't say 250.
248.
I will tell you, we got a 248, a couple on there, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that just proves that, we can get a half dart flywheeler up in those ranges. And those darts were Adventure Force or Dart Zone waffles that I cut. I cut them to 38 millimeters. So they were new darts. So realistically, these blasters, because I have one and we've built 3 or 4 or 5 now, when they settle in at a battery at 12.6 volts, you're probably going to settle in the 230s range with, a pretty normal dart that you cut or that you use. And with Adventure Force Pro darts, it's a little bit lower, but not much. We've got well over in the 230s, high 230s average with the AF Pro darts also. But really here, it's just showing there's live. We did it. I was a little nervous. We hadn't shot that through the crony yet. So I'm glad.
Why don't you put that blaster? Why don't you put that blaster on camera and then let's get a word from the owner how he's
okay.
Like it.
Okay.
All right, I'm loving it. I love the colors. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I asked Clubhouse to do the kind of gray with the red and blue. It's like the Imperial.
You get a little closer.
It's so much fun.
There you go.
So much fun to shoot. Shoots like laser beams. I've been playing with Nerf for most of my life, so it's fun to play with a blaster that's so powerful and so accurate. Can't shoot my kids with it. I've got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, but maybe if I had some teenagers, I could shoot them in the face or something with iPro.
Sure. Awesome.
All right. So I think that is pretty good for, illustrating what its capabilities are, at least from a unbiased third party
right.
coming in hot. So we'll cut this here and we'll some repairs on mine actually. So we'll get to see the inside of mine and maybe Nick's, and we'll go from there. But see you in a minute.
Sounds good. All right, everyone, we're back. This is the Clubhouse Foam Chat podcast, episode number 2. Today, we're going to talk about some dual stage half dart flywheelers that we've been working on, specifically my model, which is the Pretty Fly, and this is the dual stage version. And Chills over here has built a few himself, and we want to kind of walk through what we've done with these and show some results and kind of talk about the differences between this one and some of the other blasters that are on the market. So why don't you kick us off, Chills, with talking about how you like got involved with this project that in the first place?
Yeah, so one day on Reddit, I get a text from Rad Blasters about the Pretty Fly and if I'd be interested. And at that time, I had seen it. I knew Rad Blasters, and I was flattered. And it was a single stage at the time. I hadn't done anything dual stage and hadn't really done much in top level performance at the time. I built flywheelers, I built a lot of things, and I'd gotten used to what was going on in that space, but hadn't gotten into pushing the limits. And when we were building the single stage, it just became apparent that the platform really delivered darts to the flywheels in a way that I hadn't seen before. And I think I had built maybe 12 or 13 different flywheelers at the time. So the delivery method of the dart is unique here in that your magwell is as close as you can get to the wheels, but it's pushed by a solenoid. So different in then say the Griffin platform, which is also pretty close to the magwell, but you're pushing it with a solenoid. So feeding it into the flywheels is one way that I think we can leverage some of the dual stage ability that we have seen. And so when we finished the single stage, and as I'm staring at it, I just said on a whim, hey, why don't you put a second stage on there?
More like demanded that I put a second stage on there.
Yeah. And anyway, we got it on there fairly quickly. And long story short, we noticed that this thing was just hitting harder than we even expected, really.
Right.
We were not, when we started researching this, it was like, yeah, people are getting 220, 225 with full length darts. So
right.
We're thinking we're going to see some of that degradation and maybe break 200 and be happy. And then like the first shots are in the 230s and we're going, oh boy, something's cool here. So that's how we got started on it. And then, you know, as we went along and tweaked it, you really took over with your design elements and how it actually works. So, you know, my involvement is just as a capable maker, but not,
right.
You know, that's it.
Right. So I think it was a little bit luck and a little bit of research, but I know there are people that have all the spreadsheets out there. They know this spacing on this concavity, this length of dart. You should get this amount of FPS if you're using 2S or 3S or whatever. So using some of that research to begin with is where I got started. But essentially, in my mind, I just thought the best thing we could do is limit the travel between the two stages. So knowing that at most your dart length is going to be about 38 or 39 millimeters, I started with 40 and a half at both the crush and the distance between the two sets of flywheels. And that was the first iteration. That was this guy, the one that you first built. And this is the version that I made too. So you can see it's a little bit different. This one has the 40 and a half crush. And I think that's the one we basically started off getting 225 right off the bat from there. And then from there, I started doing lots of slow-mo videos and watching how the darts were traveling between the two sets of cages. And I kind of saw we could get away with a little bit more crush. And so went to the 39 and a half and then consequently brought in the next stage by another millimeter as well. So we ended up with the 39 and a half square between the axes of the motors. So then from there, we started seeing better FPS, and you're blurry, so get your camera focused a little bit.
Sorry.
We started getting...
getting ready for close-ups.
Sure. The FPS climbed, so then we focused towards feeding, and you can see now, as soon as this comes into focus, just how tight everything is on the distance between the magwell and the darts. And actually, I can pop this up here. I got it.
There we go.
Yeah, there you go. And while you're doing that, with this feed mechanism, you can see the dart head is actually already inside the concavity of the first stage. That means that this only has to push it in, this far before the wheels start to grab. And that's what allowed us to use this smaller 15 millimeter stroke solenoid. So why don't you say what happened with this guy, and let's see what we can do about it.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. If you notice, mine does not have a pusher. And this was the first one that I built. This one did not get the record. I think the highest this one has gotten is like 239, maybe 240. This is not the final cage. I think I have 40, not 39 and a half. But anyway, the solenoid head broke off. It actually broke. And I believe the reason is because in my trillion attempts and when we were doing this, there's a little rubber gasket on the end of the solenoid head, and I took it off, so then it's just metal on metal when it's hitting back, and so I think it finally just busted off. But the interesting news about this is, well, if that needed to all be replaced, the way this is put together is pretty conducive for replacement of parts. This piece is a MOSFET board that you can get on Amazon.
Right.
It is connected to your Noid, but also connected down into your triggering and rev system here. I'll toot the horn. This has got grip rev, which is quite interesting. I am not a real steel person, and picking this up was very intuitive. My 8-year-old loves how these work. So, that's your rev trigger back here.
Right.
And it's on a 21 amp Omron switch. So you get that nice full throw of that big switch. And then, you can put any switch you want on your trigger. There's enough room in here. I like the clicky 21 amp size, but you can use the 10 amp cherries or even a smaller one if you want to really toggle that. This Noid will go as fast as you press it, as fast as you toggle it. And since you're connected using this FET board, you don't need a large switch. You don't have to worry about it burning out. So, you've used even down to like a 3 amp switch to power this. And another piece of this puzzle here that is often overlooked is this does not have to have a battery stock.
Right.
Because of how clean and low profile this is, an out of darts 953S fits flat here. So you don't need to put the jumper connector. You can just connect your battery right into that port, and you've got a pistol mode where you put, a dual stage pistol with a 950. Now, you'll eat that battery up quick, but it's possible. And even in the single stage mode, you'll see that's plenty of space to house a battery. So really, you've got ease of repair. I'm not, it's not toolless, it's not field swappable, but like getting access here to the wheels, I took 2 parts off, the top cover and the rear shell here, and now I've got access to everything. And I still got my magwell in, I still got my whole triggering system in, and that panel will come off and give you access to everything else. So, repair and service and actually tuning is actually really nice, because from this view you can see how your darts are entering, if there's any skew, because the feed here is critical. I believe that an improper feed, you can lose 20 FPS and have whirly birds and not get what you need out of this, because having these aligned properly, making sure that your spacing is correct, your feed is correct, so that the angle that is coming in there is, the best possible, shortest way to get the dart into the wheels straight. That's where you can gain the consistency and the accuracy. And with this setup, the point is that's not hard. It's almost intuitive. The Noid sits where you need it to sit. The 2 pieces that go here to help with your feeding. It's literally 2 triangles that you print. And once you get that properly set for your build, because every build is slightly different, then your feeding really is, under control. Like, and it gives you that accuracy from 200 to 240 FPS. And I don't notice any difference in dart flight between that and my Caliburns, say, or my DMR type pistol rifles, because I'm shooting at 100-foot targets. I don't have much else that's more than 100 feet away. So the dart's getting there at 240 FPS. It's going fast. And I don't personally, I'm not concerned after that, like, okay, maybe it doesn't fly the same flat. I'm not sure. It gets to a 100-foot target at 240 FPS, the same as a 240 FPS
Right.
Springer gets to the target at 100 feet. And beyond that, I don't know that I'm concerned with that. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
I can hit that.
one of the big advantages to running 2 stages is that you're kind of setting yourself up for the best possible dart path through that final stage of the flywheel, which in a single stage, you're crushing and flinging at the same moment of the same dart. This one's kind of working as if your first stage is an alignment tool and pushing it through and taking the brunt of all the transfer of energy to the dart. So that your second stage is just that clean pass through. And I think that actually considerably helps with the accuracy of a flywheeler. And so I think a lot of the people that have doubted what your results and my results have been have said things like, well, it can't be as accurate, or, if you use waffles don't travel as far. And that's true. That's why we've kind of started using a lot of these AF Pros. AF Pros have been handling this setup just fine for me. I know that you still are using the cut downs, but I do notice that these travel further out of the blaster than a cut down waffle does at a minimal loss of FPS. And that's just because there's less to crush on these dart heads. But I think for people that are not wanting to cut down darts or just want to go to the store and grab some AF Pros, this will be just fine for that. Really, I don't notice anything out of the blaster as far as accuracy goes that's any different between the two. So while we're doing that, why don't we talk about a little bit about like what other options there are for this kind of type of setup and why we kind of think this might be getting a little bit more.
Yeah. So there's not much in the dual stage space. It's builds your build is more pricey. It's more complicated, and there just isn't that many options. You have a Griffin, you've got the Strifeoids. Curry has made his dual stage rapid strike and strife cages, and those function. Those are great, and those are what is typically used if you're not in a Griffin or a Pretty Fly. But the thing that I am certain of in my research and what I've done is that the nature of the strife cage is that you've got the 4 mounting holes, and the second stage has to be behind those mounting holes. So you have a gap. It seems that that's more appropriate for full length wheels. We'll probably pop a picture of the comparison of the two. I mean, I showed you the square cage of the Pretty Fly, but in the strife cage, it's a lot longer. So you lose some grip on a half length dart between the first and second stage. That being said, for half lengths, they can get you, pretty good numbers. Let me switch this around. One day I'll get decent camera stuff, guys. This. Anyway, Fortnite blaster that I made dual stage, and it's full auto with the rapid strike pusher in there and a 3-stage setup, just like rapid strike. And this is for short dart. It's got Curry's 40 millimeter dual stage cage in here. I didn't do the 39.5. I probably could have, but by the results that this has, and I can pop them on the screen if we need to, but it's getting around 215, over 200 And I honestly think that, and it's firing straight. You know, my buddy Christian just fired off a couple in the yard, and you know, it's great. It's 200, 215 full auto out of this cool thing because it's a rapid strike. But just like with any of the rapid strikes that you're going to get, or grip or strikes, I think you will be limited because of the spacing between stages.
And one of the things that I noticed with the Griffin is that kind of the same way you're set with that spacing. There's no options to bring the spacing further or closer together. But there's also a really tight bore on the cage itself. So if you open up the cage of the Griffin, you can actually see some skid marks depending on your dart alignment. You can't go too high because there's a top of the cage there, the cover. You can't go too low because then your darts are kind of dragging. So there's a bore there, and it's meant for accuracy. You know, it's meant to help act like a pseudo barrel. But that's one of the things that we've kind of gotten away from, is just using the concavity of the dart to be that kind of barrel, as opposed to real plastic surrounding that dart. And that's one thing we should mention, is that when we made these Pretty Flies, the only wheels we've done, you can see I have Daybreaks in here. Yours have all been Twilights. I have some builds here that are Twilights also. There's minimal difference between the two as far as geometry goes, but I would not recommend trying this with anything other than those two sets of wheels. And as far as other hardware goes, it has to be 3S. So we've got enough space in here for our go-to Z1500s. That's my favorite. That's my favorite graphene right there. I got 6 of them. And then the other thing we should mention is that the types of motors that you use here are very important.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk about some of the math that but we've tried a bunch of different things. So what did you end up with in yours?
Sure. So one of the things the reasons I wanted to do dual stage and was glad that we were working together is I was confronted with the argument of reaching critical diminishing return. You reach diminishing returns.
Sure.
And what that means, if you're not familiar, is your darts are spinning so fast that you lose surface friction, so you can't go any faster. So if you go faster, there's no return. There's no point in spinning it faster, is the concept there. And I just wasn't convinced that we were there yet. I wasn't. And so when you look at the motor options we have, when we first started, we didn't have the Merlin. So with, you know, 3S, you have Fang Revamp, which when you overvolt it will be spinning the fastest. So you think, well, that's got to be what you need to use. So similarly, when Merlins came out, you're like, oh, well, that has to be it. So let's put 4 of those in. And I did this with 4 Merlins and 4 revamps. And what you hit on earlier is I really think that you have to treat the first stage as not like it's revving up to get extra performance. It's making sure you're feeding into your high performance stage properly. You know, so it's almost like the runway, so to speak.
Sure.
And so with a Merlin or a revamp in the first stage, I didn't find it stable enough. And I don't know if it's because it's going from 0 to 60 too fast, you know, because the Merlin especially spinning at, I think it's like 74,000 RPM
Sure.
or something like that. If that's the case, or, you know, when everything is spinning, you know, like if you put a blaster with even just one stage and put it next to a table of darts, the darts start moving around. I mean, if you're feeding a dart, is the dart shaking as it goes into that stage? So what we moved to is a more reliable 3S motor in stage 1. And Krakens to Merlins is what has gotten us the 258. That's what you saw getting the 248 here live, or you will see depending on when we cut it in. But having either a Neo Rhino or a Kraken as the first stage, it's a 3S motor, so it's not overdoing what it's supposed to do. And they're just very, very stable. They don't spin very fast, you know, 36,000 RPM roughly, but they're spinning stable. That's like their intended purpose. And I think that's really part of the secret sauce here, is having a good feed stage into a really fast second stage. And I think what would be interesting to folks is you did some stuff with even honey badgers getting up into the 230s.
Yeah, I took a regular old honey badger set that I had already used in some other build and threw those in for the final stage, just as like a theory to see just how fast that final stage needs to be to get to those velocities. And we still got, I think it was 230s, 235, even with Krakens to honey badgers. Now, granted, honey badgers are a different beast when it comes to noise level, and so are fangs, because you're actually overvolting them. You'll hear in this video how the Merlin sound, which kind of sounds like a Ferrari compared to the rest of these motors, and I just love the way that that thing sounds. But I think the general statement is that as long as you're going from a high torque Neo first stage to a high RPM second stage with any option of the available options that you have, you're going to crack that 220 mark with this geometry.
And you're going to get good accuracy. So,
Sure.
you know, with a reasonably good dart, you know, not destroyed or, you know, way used, with that setup and a properly aligned cage. Now, another great thing with the cage being square, you can feel if it's aligned, because
Sure.
your finger touch all the places where it needs to be aligned. When you have extra spacing, it's kind of hard to tell. Here, it's very easy to tell if you're not.
Yep.
But because you have that stable feed, I rarely get a whirly bird, because you're feeding it in there good, and
Right.
you're giving it a chance to straighten itself out on that fast path. So, you know, I think it's like helpful in this way. And in terms of what you're going to pick for your motors, if you're going to go and do a dual stage build, you're spending a pretty penny anyway. You may want to consider doing the things that will get you to the top tier and maintain that top tier. You know, so picking Krakens to Merlins would be my recommendation with the Twilight or the Daybreak wheels.
Sure. And the other thing that I wanted to focus on was the switches that you mentioned earlier and how you can actually customize this area as well. One thing with the rev switch is that because it is using the Omron, there's a big lever in here that's pressing up on this. So you could actually bend that to your liking, and there's a screw in here that you can twist to whatever tension you want. So if you want something that's really snappy, you can tune that lever all the way out, and you can see how far out mine is sticking right now. You can actually tune that all the way into there, so you're just right on the cusp of it clicking to rev. But the main difference that between your builds and mine is you can see this funky 2-finger trigger here. That's because I wanted to really set mine up like a paintball gun, and you can see in my background I still got my little collection there of paintball stuff. That's my background, and I'm trying to emulate that feel as best I can with this. And with the short stroke, with a really clicky micro switch, you can actually, you can hear that, you can shoot this as fast as you pull the trigger. So I have some video. I'll try to.
I can't. I tried.
I should say, I would mention that you want a really light trigger here. An Omron for this setup won't work. And I would even say, the way I set mine up is that it's different. This is not a rev, like a traditional squeeze it and it's revving. I actually, because we're working with a on-off switch here, I have mine set so the rev is kind of like a safety. So as soon as you let off, when that's happening, now you're free to like have your hand off the thing entirely. So if revving right now, you can just walk from any angle. You can switch hands, shoot off this side. So this is really set up for like that FPT style. And that's really was my end game with this model. So I don't think that's available in any other thing in the hobby right now. I think this is the closest, at least you take Rival out of the picture, because Rival fires like a paintball, but the style of the things shooting it aren't like paintball at all. So this is, that was my goal with this build, is to make it a FPT, close quarters, shoot as fast as these things on the wall back here, but have you that rate of fire that's not full auto. You can still shoot slow as you want. And that is why I really love this thing.
Yeah, and it keeps you in the brush space, you know, because, you know, brushless, it's a different beast. I don't understand it very well. And so if you are in the brush space, this gives you that capability of being high performance at the FPT level, but still maintains the brush technology. So I don't want to say it's less scary, but it's less scary even to someone like myself who knows what I'm doing. Modding, this isn't scary because it's just 2 more motors and 2 more wheels, really.
Right. And you could easily have some backup parts with you, with a soldering iron that goes off a LiPo, which I have a few of them. just give it a few minutes to hook up, and you could fix those connections at the bottom if you break a tab or something like that. It's a lot easier than burning out an ESC and then your day's done. So there is that. That's kind of more like upper level hobbyist stuff. I don't know how many people are bringing spare motors with them to wars, but you technically could. It's not that hard to get the thing apart. Just bring a screwdriver with you.
Yeah, it really is easy for working with the way it's set up to get into.
So just a little bit about the availability. The files are available on my Etsy store, but I think you and I both like to see these out in the wild. So reach out to me if you're interested in making one of these, and we can definitely work something out for sure. I know that the builds are coming in slowly, but I think they're kind of getting some attention now with the results that we've been putting in the clubhouse. And I know Piggy's building one. He's got a really cool looking build in the works right now that I'm certain he'll show off at some point. But we just want to see them out there. Like, I'm not in it for the money. We just enjoy this hobby and want people to have fun with it. So yeah, reach out if you're interested in one, and we'll definitely help you out.
We want to make it accessible so that you guys could tear 220, 230, 240s out there. And I tell you, if someone breaks my high score, I will buy you a candy bar. How's that sound?
Wow.
Yeah.
It'll be melted by the time they get it from your Arizona sunshine, though.
I couldn't think of anything better. And I didn't want to put myself on the spot.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go like full build or something.
I know, right? I know. That's why I went candy bar only.
Right.
Maybe if we get some of these coming in, I wouldn't be surprised if I started some sort of competition, if people start getting these up there, because it's fun. If you can pepper a sign at 250 FPS, it's really fun.
Yeah.
Correct. It's on par with your most complicated 3D printed builds that aren't something fancy, so it doesn't have a blowback mechanism like a pigeon. So, right. But in terms of a 3D printed blaster build, this is a solenoid and it's got a board in it. So you got to be prepared to know how to do that.
Sure. All right. Well, I think we kind of covered everything we wanted to talk about with this. And it looks like you got some swag here. The Clubhouse Turtle.
Battle Turtles.
How about if someone gets that 258, we send them some swag packs.
That's a good idea.
I got some
swag packs.
I got some of the turtles myself here, so I can put them together along with some of the newer rad stickers that I got.
Yeah, we'll throw a swag pack. Let's say if you can hit 250, you get a free swag pack.
Yep. If you hit 260, we'll send a swag pack to a friend of yours also.
Wow.
Big spenders. All right, I think that's going to do it for episode 2. I'm Pballwiz, Chills 32. We'll see you next time.
See ya.